Hi everyone, I'm CSB Punshi, Indirect Tax Expert at ClearTax, and today we all gathered here to understand about GSTR-9C form. So we all know that we are already filing like 9C from the past 5 years now. So we know the basics about it, but we are going to understand about the same form in deep, like what exactly we have to do, how exactly we have to file 9C, what are the problems we usually fail while preparing GSTR-9C. So we are going to cover all of that thing. But before we even start our session, I just want to check if you all are able to hear me or not. So if you are able to hear me, just say hi on the chat box. Great. So it seems like everyone is able to hear me. So with this, we'll just start our today's session, which is the workshop on GSTR-9C. So here, when we are talking about GSTR-9C, right, the first and the important thing which obviously comes into our mind is like who all is actually required to even prepare the 9C. So let me just present my screen and you just let me know if you all are able to see my screen or not. So are you all able to see my screen? Great. So it seems like everyone is able to like see my screen too. So here, if we just talk about GSTR 9C, see there was a time when whenever we talk about GSTR 9, it used to be like a certified by a chartered accountant or a cost accountant. So we used to always say that. But from FY 21-22, the things was changed. So instead of the certifying or getting certified by a chartered accountant or a cost accountant, you yourself can self-certify it. So we ourselves can file the 9C form on the government portal. It's not like it has to be attested by a chartered accountant or a cost accountant. So that was a change which was made in FY 20, I would say 2021 itself. And the same is even applicable for FY 21-22 because now we are already in the month of October 2022 and we are going to prepare GSTR 9C for FY 21-22. So the same thing is even applicable now, which means that 9C it can be self-certified. Now the question is, okay, that was about self-certification, but question is to whom this 9 and 9C is even applicable? What exactly is this form? So we know that we have two annual form who is a registered regular taxpayer. When I'm saying registered regular taxpayer, which means who is filing GST-1 and GST-3B. So if you're filing GST-1 and GST-3B, either you're a quarterly filer or a monthly filer, you're also required to file a form called GST-9 and 9C. But again, there's some threshold limit over here. It's not like everyone is liable to or required to even file GST-9 and 9C. There is some threshold over here. So when it comes to GSTR-9, so if your turnover is up to 2 crore, then it's optional in nature. That means you don't have to file GSTR-9. Only when your turnover exceeds 2 crore, in that particular case, you are required to file GSTR-9. Now, when we talk about GSTR-9C, here the limit is 5 crore. So if your turnover is more than 5 crore, in that particular case, 9C becomes mandatory. Otherwise, it's optional in nature. You can always ignore it. You can always skip it if you don't want to file GSTR-9C. So this was all about applicability. Again, when I'm saying turnover, this turnover has to be computed at a PAN level and not at a GST level. A very simple example, let's say you're registered in two states, in Maharashtra as well as Karnataka. So if you're registered in Maharashtra as well as Karnataka, the important part over here is that while you're computing the turnover, you have to club the turnover for both the state together. Then check whether it is exceeding 5 crore or not. And the answer, if the answer comes over here is yes, then you are required to get this 9C for both the states, which is your Karnataka as well as your Maharashtra, irrespective of the limit of a particular state. So you don't have to just check the turnover for a particular state. You have to check the turnover at a PAN level. So whether the turnover at a PAN level exceeds this threshold limit of 5 crore or not, if it exceeds, then you are required to file the 9C for all the state in which you are registered. Right? So that is how we have to look into the GSTR 9C, the applicability part, like to whom this 9C is even applicable. Now, question is to whom it is not even applicable then. Obviously, when I started, right, I said if you're filing a GSTR 1 and 3B, which means ultimately you are registered as a regular taxpayer. So if you're a composition taxpayer, so for you, then you don't have to file 99C. For you, you have a different form called GSTR-4. Or if you are an ISD, if you have taken a registration as an input service distributor, for that GSTN, you don't have to file 9 and 9C. Or you are a non-resident taxable person, or you are actually a tax deductor or a tax collector. So if you have taken a registration as a tax deductor or a tax collector, like tax collector, obviously e-commerce operator. So every e-commerce operator who are required to deduct the TCS part, they are required to even take an additional registration, which is as a tax collector. So though they may have both registration, they may have a regular registration also. So for the regular registration they're required to file GSTR-9 and 9C. Whereas for the other registration, which is as a tax collector, the 9 and 9C is not required. For that, they have again a separate form. Then if you have opted for if you're a casual taxable person, again in that particular case, you are not required to file this 9 and 9C. So this was all about the applicability part. But the next question is, till when I'm required to file this form? So here there is again a due date. Obviously, there is always a due date of every return which we file. So for 9C also the due date is there. So the due date over here is 31st December 2022 for FY 21-22. So FY 21-22, the due date is 31st December 2022. Important part is that once this return has been filed, once you file your GSTR-9C for one particular financial year, you cannot revise it, right? So that's a very important part, which means while we are preparing 9C, we have to be very careful about what are the information which we are actually filing and populating in the 9 and 9C form. Because this both the form, once it is filed, you can't revise it. So that's a really important. This becomes like a kind of finalized thing. You yourself is declaring that this is my final turnover, this is my final liability, this is my final ITC. This is a reconciliation between the financial statement ka turnover and my 9 ka turnover. So all that information, once we show in 9 and 9C, that becomes our final information. Basis that, department determine your liability if you have any. Question is, what about consequences? Same thing. There is a late fees of 200 rupees per day and subject to the maximum, which is 0.25 per quarter. Of a turnover. So that's like a kind of a liability if we ask you what is the late fees if I don't file on time. So this was just a basic thing. We just talked about a very basic thing to whom it is applicable. In short, it is applicable if your turnover exceeds 5 crore. But now the part is important part. What exact information we are required to file in GSTR-9 and GSTR-9C? So if you ask me about 9, we had already one session on GSTR-9 where we discussed in detail about this 9 thing, right? Where we talked about different table, that there is some table for table number 4, 5, 10, 11, which talks about turnover and the liability. We talked about some tables called 6, 7, 8, which is focused on ITC part, and also 12 and 13, which is again focused on the ITC part. So there was some table which was focused on the liability and the turnover part. There was some table which was focused on the ITC and its reversal. So this was different table of GSTR-9 form itself, right? But 9 was just a summation of what you have filed. It is just a summation of your entire liability. It was just a summation of your entire turnover. It's a summation of what ITC you have claimed, what ITC you have reversed for a particular financial year, right? That is all about GSTR-9. Now, when we talk about GSTR-9C, it's a reconciliation statement. So, in fact, when we look into 9C, it clearly says a reconciliation statement. But what exact reconciliation are they even asking for? So, here they are saying that it's a reconciliation statement between different things. One reconciliation could be what you have shown in GSTR-9. So, the turnover which you have declared in GSTR-9 and the turnover as per your books of account, you just reconcile both of these things. If we look into an idle word, this both will match, right? If we look into the turnover as per my books of account, which is my financial statement, and the turnover as per my GST return, which is by GSTR-9, because there I'm going to show my final turnover, these two should match. And if it is not matching, then tell me why it is not matching. Tell me the differences. And obviously, there would be a lot of differences between these two. The reason why there would be a difference is because when it comes to GSTR-9, we always go with the concept of supply. If there is a supply, there would be GST liability. If there is no supply, I'm not going to even pay any GST, right? So when it comes to GST, we always have to keep in mind the concept of supply. Whereas when we talk about my accounting standard and how I prepare my financial statement, there the term of that reason, the sale, the revenue which I recognize could be a little different. I can give you a few practical examples. Think about a branch transfer. Right? When I talk about branch transfer, so here let me first go to a first part, right? Like how exactly they're even asking for the reconciliation statement. So let me first show like what are the information. So there is a part one which just talk about the basic detail, like what is the financial year. Obviously here is 21, 22. Then the GST and the legal name, the trade name, and are you liable to audit under any other act, like maybe in the Companies Act or Income Tax Act. Then you have to just specify that. This is the second part which we were referring to. We were talking about the part two. Here, the part two is about the reconciliation of the turnover which you have declared in the audited financial statement with the turnover which we have in our GSTR-9, which is our annual return. So we have to actually reconcile between these two. We have to tell, okay, this is turnover as per financial statement, this is turnover as per my GSTR-9. If there is a differences, tell me the reasons. It could be positive, it could be negative, so that ultimately here I do some adjustment plus minus, I get into GST-9, the difference is net becomes 0. That is what we are trying to do it over here. Now this is what government have given, right? So there is table number 5 and 6 where they are asking for the reconciliation of the turnover in the audited financial statement with the turnover which is declared in GSTR-9, right? So if you just see at the top 5A, 5A, they're just saying it's a reconciliation of turnover which is declared in your annual, the financial statement. Now, the first important part is whenever I look into the financial statement, right? So, our financial statement are always at a pan level, right? Because I always prepare at a pan level. But when it comes to GSTR-9C filing, I always file at a GSTN level. So 9C filing is at a GSTN level, though my financial statement are at a PAN level. So what they say over here, that if your financial statement, let's say I am registered in multiple state. If I am registered in one state, then there is no problem, right? I will just take the values which is coming in my financial statement. But in case I am registered in the multiple state, so whenever I am registered in a multiple state, in that particular case, from my books of account itself, I will derive that this is my total turnover. So ideally, whatever the turnover I'm going to show in my 5A, and if I sum up for all the GSTs together, it should always match with my final books of accounts, so the final financial statement which I have prepared, because my financial statement was at a PAN level, right? So that is the first part. In 5A, I'm showing my turnover for a particular GST as per my financial statement. So I got that figure. I'm going to show it over here. Now, okay, RK is saying that he can listen my voice twice. Is it happening with everyone or is it only with RK? Okay, Abhinav says it's audible correctly. I would say RK, if you can just refresh, that will be better. So here we just talked about 5A, right? So 5A, we said it is turnover as per my financial statement, and I said that this we have to drive at a GST level. So it will be at a PAN level, but we have to always come at a GST level and show this figure, right? That's the first part. Now the second part over here is, if we just look into this, right? So there is also an entry called, I would say 5Q. 5Q is nothing but it talks about the turnover as per your GSTR-9. So here we are telling what is the turnover, final turnover you have declared in your GSTR-9. So that is a value which we are going to cover up over here. And how are you going to even come up with this figure? It is nothing but whatever was there in GSTR-9, we have table called 5N, right? 5N plus table number 10 minus table number 11. That was a turnover which I declared in my GSTR-9 form. So that value will be shown over here. Now the thing is it going to be auto-populated, right? Where the government is going to auto-populate this for me? The answer over here is that today, if you go on the GSTN portal, you will be able to start preparing your GSTR-9C only once your GSTR-9 is filed. Once you file your GSTR-9, all of your figure get freezed. Once all the figures are freezed, then you will be able to download one JSON file which you can ingest in the government 9C offline utility, and all these figures, wherever it is shown that this is a value from GSTR-9, this will be auto-populated from there. But now if you ask me practically, should I always first file my GSTR-9 and then I should go ahead and prepare my 9C? I would obviously say no, we should not do that. We should always parallelly do that. You prepare your GST-9, make up a draft format. You don't file it, right? You prepare it with you, keep it with you, then also prepare 9C at the same time, right? After you have prepared your draft GST-9 and you feel, okay, this is a kind of a finalized state, you prepare your 9C automatically from the 9 table, the 9C. Like here, the values like in the 9C should be auto-populated from 9 itself. You prepare your 9C also, then see whether 9 and 9C now are they actually looking correct. And if you feel yes, they both are perfect, then you go ahead and file your 9 and 9C, right? That is how we should do it, which means ideally we should not file 9 unless you have even prepared your 9C. So you should always prepare your 9C also offline before filing your GST-9, so that if you realize that there was some adjustment entry which needs to be passed in GST-9 form itself, you pass there itself rather than passing that adjustment entries in the 9C. So that's like one thing which we should always do. And I could see there's a question from Prashant who is asking 9C will open only after filing 9. And that's true, Prashant, that if you ask me, yes, 9C only gets open only after filing 9C. The GST 9C gets open only after you file GST 9, but you can always prepare a draft version, right? So we already have a lot of tools in the market. In fact, ClearText also, if you're using that. So it while you're preparing 9, all the value from 9 will also be populated in your 9C. You can prepare your 9C there itself and then only file 9 and 9C together. So that is how you can always do this. So rather than directly filing, first filing 9 and then basis that value you're preparing 9C, I would never suggest that. You should always do prepare draft 9, prepare 9C. If there's some adjustment, do in the 9 itself and then file 9 and 9C. So that is how you should always do. So now when we were talking about, when I said, okay, let's just prepare this draft 9C, right? We have populated these figures in 5Q, and 5Q is nothing, but this is a kind of a turnover which is declared as per your GST-9. And when I look into GST-9, what exactly they are even looking into, they're just saying it's a 5N plus 10 minus 11 of your GST-9, right? So in GST-9, we had showed some turnover and they have just shown the turnover here, right? So that is how the figures are populated over here. But now the next point was like, okay, I had some figure here. I got some values over here. But then I could see there's a question from Shubham who's asking, we can use offline utility when the site. Yes, Shubham, you can always use the offline utility. Only the problem would be under offline utility, right? The values which is coming from GST-9 will not be auto-populated unless you file your GST-9 on the government portal. Once you file your GST-9, that value will be auto-populated. Otherwise, that value will not be auto-populated. Right, so now what we have done, we have shown under value 5Q, right? This is a turnover which is coming as per my 9. I showed a turnover which was as per my, this is here when we look into, right? So when we were looking here in my 5A, that was as per my books, right? A financial statement. And here I have the turnover as per my, I would say as per my, the GST-9, right? That is what we have done. First question, would there be difference between these two? Let me ask you this question, a very normal question. Will there be a difference between the turnover as per the financial statement and the turnover as per my GST-9? Will there be any difference or not? So you can maybe reply on the chat box. Will there be a difference or not? I could see Shubham says yes. Shashank says yes. Hitesh says yes. Sachin says yes. Everyone says yes. And that's the right answer too, right? That obviously there would be a differences. Why would there be even differences between these two? Let me give you a few examples over here. Think about branch transfer. A very normal thing, right? Whenever you have a multiple GSTN, you may always have a branch transfer, right? When you have a branch transfer, if you think from the GST-9 perspective, whenever you supply from your one state to the another state, right? Whenever you're supplying from one state to the another state, in that particular case, this is treated as a supply, right? You also issue a tax invoice, you also pay GST on top of it. Is that true? Like in case of a branch transfer, whenever I'm supplying from my one state to the another state, when I am preparing my GST-9 for a particular state, I will show that as a supply and that will also be included in my turnover. So which means ultimately when I would have filed my GST-9, it would have included the value of the branch transfer in my table number 5 and 10 or 11, right? But when we look from the financial statement, right? Financial statements are always prepared at a pan level, and whenever I have even derived the value at my GSTN level, I would have not included branch transfer because branch transfer is something which is a kind of a nominal nature where it does not impact my profitability. It's not even my revenue, right? Whenever I'm supplying from one GSTN to another GSTN, that's not even my revenue, right? So here you will always see a difference between your financial statement and your, I would say, GST-9, right? So if you just see financial statement, there would be some less value, less turnover. wherever you look into your GST-9, there would be some more value. So what you should do ideally to bring a match between these two, you have to add that branch transfer value in the turnover as per the financial statement, so that both of this value actually matches, right? Let's think about, there was a total financial statement and there was some value which was coming as 1 lakh, right? As per assume karo, as per GST-9, the total value was coming as 1,50,000, right? And the total branch transfers is 50,000. What you would do in your financial statement, you will add that 50,000 so that the values for the financial statement after adjustment matches with your GSTR-9, right? So in this example, the branch transfer, what I will do, I will just add it over here. So there the government itself, right, when you look into the government, they there itself have given some information here. So they themselves are telling the reasons that why would there be even a difference. So if you look into, there is a reason called 5D, which is a deemed supply, right? So where if we just look into this, there's a deemed supply, so this branch transfer also comes over there. So here you, what you have to do, you just have to add it over here. So this is like one reason where I said like, okay, you can always have the branch transfer, and when you have the branch transfer, so there you just have to add up the value. Now there could be another reason. So this I gave you as a first simple example, right? There could also be differences because of the valuation thing. When I'm saying valuation thing, many times think about, I'm into business and I'm a travel agent, for example, right? If I'm a travel agent, you also know that there is some way where the government says that you have to pay the taxes on the entire amount. So you always have that option where you can claim ITC and you have to pay the taxes on the entire amount, which means on the booking ticket amount also you have to pay GST. Now what happened, there was a client who came and who asked, can you do booking for me, can you like book for the entire like the air flight tickets and all. I'm like, yeah, I can do that. What I do, when I actually issued a bill, I said, okay, there was an air ticket of 50,000 rupees, my commission is 10,000 rupees, so ultimately I'm going to charge on 60,000 as per the rules, because that is one option. So I always have two options there. I opted for the other option where I can also claim ITC. I'm like, okay, on 60,000 I will like charge GST. Now, if we look into my GST-1 reporting, right? I'm a travel agent. I would have shown my turnover as 60,000, right? I would have included the turnover of my air ticket also. But when I look into my books of account or my financial statement, that air ticket is something which is a kind of a reimbursement for me. I would have taken that ticket from some agency, right? I would, let's say for Indigo, I just took that money and I would have paid that money to them. For me, my income is only the commission income, right? Only for the purpose of supply and charging GST, I charge the GST on the entire 60,000, which means ultimately when I look into my GST-9, I would be seeing my turnover as 60,000, whereas when I look into my books of account, my turnover would be 10,000. So there would be a difference between these two transactions, and the reason why there is a difference because of the valuation thing, right? Because the valuation on which I have to charge GST as per the GST Act was different as compared to the revenue which I have to recognize, or the revenue which I have to show in my, I would say, financial statement, right? So here also you may see such differences, and the differences we have to report it over here because this is a genuine thing, right? So here the government themselves are saying clearly, yes, I know that there would be differences over here. You just tell me that this is some differences which has to be reported, right? So you have to just show that information. So there is a section called 5M where you can show the adjustment in turnover under section 515 and rules there under, which means because of the valuation rule, if you have some differences, positive or negative, you have to show it over here. Not only this, like if again, right, whenever we're talking about there's a differences and all, there can be other differences too. There could be other reasons because of maybe some foreign fluctuations and all when it comes to export, right? Again, when I'm doing some export, there can be a time, right? So think about, I'm exporting some goods and all, right? When I'm exporting good, I may be exporting at the time when, let's say, shipping bill was there, right? So at the time when I issued a shipping bill and all, and as per that, I have also like shown, I have issued an invoice, I have even paid the government like GST and all, right? And the time, the valuation, right? Because I have to convert, let's say I raised for $1 lakh, right? But there the time when I have issued that invoice, the rate was different. Let's say the rate was $75. It is like one, like I would say 1 rupee is equal to 75. But the thing is that when I was recording on my books of account, there the valuation rules was little different. Maybe when I realized that money, the value for that forex value was different. So because of this, again there would be difference between my financial statement and my GSTR-9. Because the time when I showed it as a supply, the rate, the exchange rate which I have taken was different as compared to the exchange rate which I have shown in my financial statement. So whenever you have such differences, again you have to show that differences under the 5N, that these are the differences because of the foreign exchange fluctuation or adjustment. So again you have to show it over here. Now, this was some of the reason, right? We said there's a valuation ka reason. There could be because of some section 15, because of foreign exchange, because of this branch transfer and all. So these are some of the example when we have some differences over here. But not only this, there could be other differences also. Think about this unadjusted advances. What exactly is that? See, again, when we are saying in case of the supply of services, right? Whenever we have some services, then we are receiving some advances. So whenever we receive advances against the supply of the services, we know that we have to pay the taxes on that particular advances. So when we have to pay the taxes on that advances, which means ultimately when I look into my GSTR-9, right? And I'm assuming that advances was not adjusted in the same financial year. Because if it was adjusted in the same financial year, then I don't have any problem, right? I would have already issued the invoice. So in this particular case, what exactly happened? I had some advances. I have also paid the taxes on that advances, right? And till now, I have not adjusted. I have not even raised an invoice in that particular case. So what will happen in such case? So in case I have some advances, that will be included in my GSTR-9. So when I look into this, right? Again, when I look into my 5Q, here the taxes which I have paid on that particular advances, the value would be appearing over here because that has been included in the definition of the turnover as per my GSTR-9. But if I look into my financial statement, if I have received some advances, will I even recognize it as my revenue? The answer is no. Even if I had to pay the taxes on that, I have shown that in my GSTR-9, that included in the definition of the turnover as per my GSTR-9. But when I look into my financial statement, that part, that advances on which I have paid the taxes, against which I have not raised the invoice, that will never form part of my 5A. Due to which again you will see some differences between these two. So whenever you see these differences, again you have to make the adjustment entry over here, and we have to show that what was the unadjusted advances at the end of the financial statement. So if there is some unadjusted advances, which means you have not raised the invoice against the same, you have to show that information under 5C. Similarly, there can also be opening differences, right? Because there were obviously opening differences, so that opening differences also you have to show it over here. So this was few examples that when you actually have a difference between your financial statement and the differences as per the turnover in your GST-9, and you have to tell the reasons that why there is a differences. Now, first another important question. We said that the government, they have already provided some of the reason. What are the reasons? They say, okay, as per 5B, if there's some unbilled revenue at the beginning of the financial year, right? If there is some unbilled revenue, there also you have to show it over here. Now question is, what is unbilled revenue, right? Unbilled revenue, what exactly is that like? So here when we talk about even the unbilled revenue, which means ultimately this is not even recognized as my revenue. And we would have heard, I think, a recent case study which was even there of Byju's, right? Where we said that, okay, they have to pay the GST and all, but as per the accounting standards, right? As per the accounting standard, that is not even recognized as their revenue for that particular financial year, and that revenue has to be categorized in the 5 year. Right? So which means that revenue, it was not there as per their books of account, but when we look into GST-9, because we have to pay GST, that was included in that particular turnover. So there would be difference between these two. So you have to show it that over there. But the main question is, okay, we understand that there are many reasons why we have such differences. And I could see a lot of examples are also given on the chat box where we have written like why there would be a differences. One example, I think from Ravu, I'm saying I could see there is some electricity deposit interest income. There's another example from Shubham who is saying revenue accrued in the books of account. There's some special discounts which is given, which is not considered in the GST. So these few of the example that you actually have a differences between the revenue which you have recognized in your financial statement and the supply as per your GSTR-9. And here the government they themselves says that yes, we understand that there are the differences, and they are also telling us the reasons why there would be a differences. But now the another important question which will come into our mind is that okay, I understand as per 5A, I will tell this is total revenue which is as per my books of account. I will clearly say as per 5Q that this is my total turnover as per GST-9. If there are some adjustments and all, I will do under the 5B, 5C, 5D, whatever the reasons they are saying. If it is falling over there, I will just show it over here. And if it is not even falling under this, if there's some other extra reason which was not even there, I can always show that information under 5O. Right? That is what I can always do that. Now the another important part, do I have to actually show all this breakup? Can I directly show the entire difference amount under the like there is a column called, if you just see over here, right, there's a column called 5, sorry, there's a row called 5O. Can I directly show everything under the 5O itself rather than showing all that breakup? So that would be the next question, and let me ask you this question from all of you. Can I directly show the entire information under the 5O itself rather than showing all that breakups? I could see there's an answer from Shubham who says no. What about others? MK Shah says yes. What about others? Mohanba says no. Anurag says no. All breakup need to give. Shuma says no. All right. So I'm getting mostly some people says yes. Some people are saying no. So see, if you ask me, right, there was a notification which was issued where they said that the field from this 5B, right, 5B, this is actually a reasons like why there would be difference. So field from 5B to this 5N, right, till that adjustment, like whatever the reasons they have listed, they say this is optional in nature. If you have some adjustment, you can directly show in 5O. That is what the government have come up with, which means they're saying if you don't need to provide a breakup, it's okay, you don't provide it. You directly report under the 5O itself. I am very okay, and accordingly file your GST-9. Right? So which means it's optional in nature. But now the question is, yes, it's optional in nature, but what do we recommend? Should we show the breakup properly, or should we directly go and just show in 5O? Right? So the here answer is, even if it is optional in nature, even if the government themselves are saying, okay, if you don't want to provide it, you don't provide that information, but it's always recommended that you provide the breakup of that. The reason why, because tomorrow when the department comes and let's say issues a notice and asks, hey, why there's a difference, you will be able to clearly say, hey, I have already reported here. This is because of my valuation thing. This is because of my foreign fluctuation. So you yourself will be in a better position to explain them, so that you can track it properly. For you, it's easy to even inform to the department, because see, whenever you receive notice, let's say after 2 years, 3 years, when you receive the notice, right, you won't even realize, you won't even remember that what happened 2 years back. So it's very good, it's very important that you keep your all documentation handy at the time you're preparing and filing 990. So even if tomorrow department raises a notice, you are in a position to explain this to the department. So for that, it's always recommended that you show all the breakup, right? So this is what we always say, that even if, right, even if you it is optional in nature, you should always show the breakup, so that tomorrow if department comes in, you are able to justify. So this was about our main table, which is 5 and 6. When I was talking about table number 5, this is nothing but it is asking the turnover reconciliation. The turnover as per the financial statement, the turnover as per your GST-9. What is the differences? Tell me the reasons for the differences. They've already listed some of the reasons where we took examples also, like unbilled revenue, unadjusted advances, or maybe there is some credit notes, right, which has been issued after the end of the financial year. It could be because of some trade discount, right? When I'm saying trade discount, where like let's say some can be adjusted in your GST, some cannot be, right? So all of that has to be shown it over here. If you are not able to get the list from here, then you can even report that in 5.4. After that, ultimately your unreconciled turnover ideally should always be 0, right? Ideally your the unreconciled turnover, which is Q minus P, should always be equal to 0. And if it is not, right, which means if your Q minus P is not equal to 0, then there is a problem over there, which means then you again have to tell, okay, what is the reason that why it is not even matching. So if you have genuinely made a mistake, which means ultimately in GST-9 you forgot to even report it. There was some turnover, you forgot to report in GST-9. So you have to tell the reasons for that and extra liability, because if you have because of that, you have to pay it to the government. But as I told that we should always prepare 9 and 9C parallelly, which means first you prepare your draft GST-9, then prepare 9C. If there's some adjustment which needs to be made, make in GST-9 and then you file your 9. Right? So if you have done that, then most of the time in table number 6, you're not going to fill any information, which means ultimately there would be no information which will even come and form part of your table number 6. So this was about table number 5 and 6. I would like to first understand from all of you, like, is there any queries? Is there any thing which you want to ask, especially in respect of table number 5 and 6, where we are talking about the reconciliation of the turnover in the audited annual turnover with GSTR-9. So if you have any queries over here in table number 5 and 6, you can always ask on the chat box. All right. So here we talked about table number 5 and 6. Now let's move to the next table. Now we are talking about the reconciliation of the taxable turnover. Till now it was a gross turnover. It was also including your exempt supply, the non-GST supplies and all. Now we are talking about the reconciliation of the taxable turnover. See, if you ask me, right, this information, ideally you would be able to prepare from the GST-9 form itself. You don't even have to do any more calculation over here, provided you have filed the correct GST-9. So if you have filed the correct GST-9, this entire table 7 can be auto-filled from there itself, and there would be no mismatch. Now let's look into this, what exactly this table 7 have that information. So we'll just talk about that. So if you just look into this, here we are saying annual turnover after adjustment, right? So there are two information. There is a row called 7A and then there is a row called 7F. If we look into the 7F, this is talking about taxable turnover as per the type liability declared in annual return, right? So if we look into this, there is a taxable turnover as per the liability which is declared in the annual return. And when we look into this, there is an annual turnover after adjustment, right? What exactly that means? So if we just see here, right, we had this 5P. What was 5P? We said that this is my financial statement. After I got my financial statement, I have done all my plus and minus so that I come into my turnover which is declared in my annual return. That is what we have done. So financial statement we have done some plus minus and said, okay, now this is ideally my turnover as per my GST-9. Once I know that this is my turnover as per GST-9, ideally, which I have derived it from adjustments of my financial statement, which means I'm saying, okay, now you put this information over here. So under 7A, I'm saying this is my annual turnover after doing all adjustment to bring that value as per the GST. This is some value which is my as per financial statement, right? After I got that, because this we can directly take it from here itself, you don't have to do any calculation over here. Then let's say, okay, this is your annual turnover as per the financial statement after all adjustments. Now you remove all these exempted supply, the nil rated supply, the non-GST supplies and all. So you remove all this. So what we are doing, as per 7B, you're saying, okay, tell me now what is your exempted supply, nil rated supply, non-GST supply, or no supply turnover. You keep the value over here. Now you will also have some zero rated supply, which is my export or my supply to an SCZ, where we don't pay taxes, because there also we can have with payment or without payment, right? So now again, when I go to my GSTR-9, right, in my GSTR-9, we had table 4, we have table number 5. When we look into table number 4, it was talking all about my taxable turnover, and whenever I was looking into my table number 5, it was talking about my entire exempt of where I don't have to pay any GST. Entire that turnover was shown in table number 5 of GSTR-9, right? So when I looked into my GSTR-9 table number 5, if you remember that there was something called exempt supply, the nil rated supply, the non-GST supply, my zero rated supply without payment of IGST, or maybe I have some B2B transition but under the reverse charge where the recipient is liable to pay the taxes. So where I was not liable to pay any taxes, all that supplies was forming part of my table number 5, right? So that is GSTR-9 ka table number 5. Now if you just look over here, that is what they're asking here. They're saying, okay, tell me in the 7B, what is the value of exempted supply, the nil rated, non-GST non-supply? What is the value of zero rated supply without payment of tax? What is the value of supply on the tax to be paid by recipient on the reverse charge? You tell me this, do all this adjustment. If you do all this adjustment, finally you will get a taxable turnover, right? Ultimately, you will get a taxable turnover as per your books of account. If I'm saying I have filed my correct GSTR-9, right, I would have already populated this value in my table 5 of GSTR-9, and if I directly derive that value from there and populate it over here, then you will get this taxable turnover. And when you get the taxable turnover here and the taxable turnover which is given in GSTR-9, so ultimately your unreconciled taxable turnover will always be 0, right? If I'm saying that as per my books of accounts, right, whatever I have shown in my books of account, the exempted supply, the nil rated supply, the non-GST and all of that thing, I have also shown in my GSTR-1 and GSTR-3B, because there also I have to show the exempt supply, the nil rated supply, the non-GST supply. If I have shown correctly over here, ultimately the value was correctly populated in GSTR-9, and if the value was correctly reported in GSTR-9, so you will never see a difference over here. Right, so this is what we are saying. So what they are saying, okay, you take your annual turnover as per the financial statement. We have done all that adjustment plus minus, that valuation ka different, the foreign fluctuation ka different, the advances ka different. We have done all that. Now we come to know that this is a total turnover which actually matches the GSTR-9. So ideally, when I was saying if I do all the adjustment over here, this will always match with your GSTR-9. So you try that ultimately 5R is equal to 0. If that is that thing, so this will always match with your GSTR-9. Now you remove all this exempted and all this supplies where you don't have to pay any taxes. You will get the taxable turnover, and then there would be taxable turnover as per GSTR-9, and ultimately the difference again here would be 0. But if you feel there is a differences, why would there be even differences? Let's assume that in GSTR-9 you have not correctly shown your no supply or maybe non-GST supply, right? In that particular case, you might have some differences, and if there is a differences, it's better that you make an adjustment in GSTR-9 form itself. So that was the main reason I always keep on saying that please first make a draft GSTR-9, prepare your 9C. If there's some adjustment, better you do all adjustment in 9 form itself, then only file 9, so that ultimately your 9 is very clean. The 9 is very clean and the department don't get any mismatches over there. So if that was the case, then you won't see any differences, and ultimately the value under your 7G will be 0. And if the value under 7G is 0, you don't even have to explain the reason for the unreconciled revenue. Right, so this was about like if I look into our next table, which was about the reconciliation of the taxable turnover. So here we have done the reconciliation of the taxable turnover. So again, I would, before going to the next table, I would like to understand if you all were able to understand about until this point the reconciliation of the gross turnover and the reconciliation of the taxable turnover. If you have any query, you can please ask on the chat box. I will be happy to answer. Till then, I could see there is one question from Tarun who is saying how we will show the interest income and the capital gain. So Tarun, if you again ask me, right, there is two things here. One is your interest income. Let's say interest is on FD. If there is an interest on an FD, we all know that as per the GST, this is a kind of an exempt supplies, right? Where you don't pay any GST at all. So this is considered as an exempt supply. So which means ultimately you're not paying any GST. And when you are not paying any GST on this particular supply, so now the next point over here is, if we look into the revenue as per my books of account, this will obviously it be a part of our revenue, right? So here again, when we go back, let's just go back to the same thing. When we see in 5A, whether this will be included, that interest income, answer would be yes, because it is my revenue. It will be there in my 5A. Question is whether it will be part of your 5Q. I would say ideally yes, if you have shown that under the exempt supplies, because government also asks the information for the exempt supply. And if you have shown that as a part of your exempt supplies income, then it will be there, right? Under that 5Q, that value would always be there. Because you remember, for the purpose of 42 and 43 reversal, this interest on this FD is not it should not be considered an exempt supply, but in general, that is considered as an exempt supply. So you would have shown that as a part of exempt supply, which means ultimately that was part of your 5Q also, right? So it was part of this, which is 5A, and it is also part of 5Q. So ultimately, there would be no difference because of interest income. That is one part. So here you would not see any difference. Now when you land into this 7A, that interest income would be included in 5A. The answer is yes. Under 5B, now you have to tell, okay, this is total exempt income, which is the interest income. When you do that, then ultimately it will always match with your taxable turnover. So that is how we have to look into the interest income. Right, so that's the main reason I said that if there are some exempt supplies and non-GST, whether you have correctly reported in GSTR-9 or not is a very important thing. If you have correctly reported in your GSTR-9, right, then in that particular case, we will not see any differences over here. But if there was some mistakes, because most of the time we don't even show this non-GST supply in my GSTR-1 or 3B. So if that's the case, then you will always see a differences over here. And if there are some differences, you have to tell the reasons for such differences. This is because of the capital gain income. This is because of my interest income. So that you have to always show under the 8A or 8B, 8C, right? So you have to tell the reason and the value for the same. Right? So this was hope Tarun, that answers your query. Still, if you have further doubt, you can always ask me on the chat box. Another question from Rajan, who is asking, can we adjust the difference in turnover in table number 9? Rajan, adjust the difference if turnover in table number 9. Exactly. Sorry, I could not get your query. Is it table 9 or you're talking about the GSTR-9? If you're asking about GSTR-9, right? So in that particular case, see, Rajan, see, we always have to make sure whatever we are showing in GSTR-9 is my turnover, right? That is something kind of a GST turnover. Ideally, should always match with your books of account. And if you have not reported some liability in my GSTR-1 and 3, you missed out. And you realized, oh, this was some liability where I have to pay the taxes, you should always show that as a part of your GST-9. But if it is the difference is because of the example I gave, let's say valuation differences, obviously you're not going to show that in GST-9. That all information you have to show in GST-9C itself. But wherever it was actually your supply, but you forgot to show in your GST-9, you have to make such adjustment in the GST-9 form itself, rather than bringing the differences in the 9C form. Right? Hopefully that answers your query. Then the next question is from Tarun, who is asking, how will e-commerce operator classify the supply made under 9.5 in GSTR-9 and 9C? So, okay, so Tarun, if you again ask me about the e-commerce operator, right? When it comes to the e-commerce operator under the 9.5, there is the changes which was also done in GSTR-3BK form. And when we look into the changes which was done in the GSTR-3BK form, they have introduced this table called 3.1.1, right? That is what they're showing. So the turnover, the value on which they are paying the GST. So again, we have to see how they have been showing in GSTR-1, right? Because in GST-1, if they are showing that as a part of their turnover, right? In that particular case, in that table 9C, that because of the valuation section 15, right, they can always make the adjustments. But if they are not even included as a turnover in GST-9, because now the government itself have introduced a separate table altogether, which is 3.1.1, it will not be even form part of your turnover in your GST-9. So if it is not part of your GST-9, that differences will not be even there. But think about if this is before that changes, because this circular was actually very late, and also in 3B also they have done all adjustments very late. So which means ultimately earlier they have added that as a part of turnover only. So e-commerce operator, even it was not their turnover, they just have to discharge the liability. They have included that as part of their turnover. So if that was the case, they have to put that adjustment entry as per section number 15. So under the valuation rule, right, all the differences because of this, they have to put that value over there. Right, so this was about especially when we just discussed about, I would say, the gross turnover and the taxable turnover. The next important part is the reconciliation of the taxes paid. Now the government is asking about, tell me the rate level differences. So here they're talking about the reconciliation of the rate wise liability and that amount which they have to pay. So you have to tell, so this ultimately when we file GST-1, right, if you club all the section B2B, B2C and all, you will always pass the rate also. So here you just have to tell, okay, 5%, this was the liability, the 12%, this was the liability, 18%, this was the liability, 28%, this was the liability. You have to tell the liability, the taxable value, the turnover, all information you have to show it over here. So here you will just show that entire value. So you will get a total amount as per this entire table. So this is as per your books of account. So that what was your liability as per your books of account at a rate level, and what is the total liability as per your GSTR-9, right? So ideally, so this GST-9 will be auto computed. This will come from this value which we are showing over here, and ideally the differences between these two should always be zero. Why? Because while we were preparing GST-9, we would have done all the adjustments. If we have missed some liability, we would have already adjusted in the GST-9 report. If we have paid extra also, we would have already adjusted in the GST-9 form. So since we would have already adjusted, so ideally the liability which you are showing as per the books of account and the liability which is coming from GST-9, the difference between these two should always be zero. If it is not, then you have to tell that why there is a difference between these two, right? Sorry. So here we have to just talk about this. So here, if you look into this, we have just shown the differences between the I would say the rate level liability. So we just have to show the liability information over here. Now the next part is, because where we just talked about the liability part, right? Like how exactly we have to even show the liability part. If there's a differences, we just have to tell the reasons why there is a differences. And if there is some extra liability which we have not discharged in GST-9 form, then we have to show that value over here and accordingly even pay the taxes. Now the next very important, and I think this is one table where we have a lot of queries also, which is the part 4, which is the reconciliation of the input tax credit, right? So if you ask me about the reconciliation of the input tax credit, here we have this table number 12 and 13 of GSTR-9C, where we are doing the reconciliation of the ITC part, right? See, as per the books of account, we know that this is the total ITC which we can claim, right? Which is the total eligible ITC we can claim. But in the books of account, this is always at a PAN level. We have to always bring this figure at a GSTN level. After we bring this figure at a GSTN level, we have to show that information under 12A. Similarly, because we have already claimed the ITC, right? We have already claimed the ITC. We have already reversed some ITC as per GSTR-9, right? In GSTR-9, we have already shown in table number 6 that what is the ITC which was claimed. In table number 7, we have also shown that what was the ITC reversed. So ultimately, table 6 minus table 7, the value, the net ITC which we have claimed, we have to show it over here in 12E. So in 12E, we will get the value that what was the total net ITC, right? So 6, we showed this is a claimed ITC. In table number 7, we show this is a reversed ITC. So ultimately, when we look into 12E, we'll show this is my net ITC, right? We have done that part. Now here we have the net ITC, and if we look into 12A, we are getting the total ITC we have claimed as per my financial statement, as per my books of account. There would be some value over there, right? And then there would be some differences. Obviously, if you look into my books of accounts and if I look into my GSTR-9, there could be differences. Why would there be even differences between these two? Why would there be differences between what I have shown in my GSTR-9 and what I have even shown in my, I would say, what I have shown in my books of account? The one main reason, if you look into this, is because there is some ITC which is booked in the earlier financial year but is claimed in the current financial year. A very simple example, we know that there is always a time limit for claiming an ITC. I can always claim an ITC which is related to my previous financial year till 30th of November. So earlier this date used to be till September ka return period, but now we know because of the recent notification the date has been extended till 30th November, which means till October return period, right? So now I can claim the ITC which is related to my previous year till my October ka return period, which is filed. I'm assuming that has been filed at least by 30th of November. So I will always be able to claim ITC of my previous year in the current year. Now the thing, when I'm filing my GSTR-9C for my previous year, which means here I'm talking about FY 21-22. So whenever I'm filing my GSTR-9C for FY 21-22, there is some ITC which I have claimed in my GSTR-3B for FY 21-22 itself, right? There can also be ITC which is related to FY 2022, but I would have claimed here, in the current return period, which means till, let's assume, till 30th of November. If that is the case, in such case, obviously that ITC was part of my books of account, but when I look into ITC claimed in the annual return, right? Annual return may we show that ITC, but that we show in 12 and 13, right? In 13 we show that ITC, but here when we're taking out this figure, we're taking from 6 minus 7, which is only in respect of the ITC which was claimed in the same financial year, right? So that part we have to show it over here. So where we are saying this, as per the books you were eligible to claim, but you would have claimed in the next financial year because you anyhow have the right to claim in the next financial year. So there would be difference between two, and you have to show that value over here. Similarly, there would be ITC which you have booked in, or you have booked in the current financial year, but you may be claiming in the next financial year, right? So that part has to be shown over here. So there was some for previous year you have claimed in current year, for current year you have claimed in the next financial year. All adjustment has to be shown over here, and if there is still a difference between these two, then you have to again tell that why there is a difference between these two. I could see there is one question from Prashant who is asking, ITC of previous year cannot be claimed after September of current year. No, Prashant, there is a recent notification which has been issued. So as per that new notification which has been issued, right, now for FY 21-22 onwards, right, from FY 21-22 onwards, you can always claim the ITC of the previous year till 30th November. But we all understand that ITC we can always claim only in the 3B form, right? So when I'm saying I'm claiming in the 3B form, which means till my October ka return period. So if I'm a monthly filer, in my October GSTR 3B, I will be able to claim that ITC. So if I am filing till time due date, which is 20th November, let's say I filed my October 3B on 20th of October, I will be eligible to claim the ITC. In the same way, let's say I filed my October return on, let's say, 30th November. Still, I will be allowed to claim the ITC for my previous year, which means even if I'm delaying in my filing my GSTR 3B for the month of October 2022, on which I have claimed some ITC which was related to the previous financial year, still I would be allowed to claim that ITC. But now think about the another example. I filed my October return. I have shown some ITC which was related to my previous financial year, but I filed my October return on 1st December. Will I be allowed to claim that ITC for the previous financial year? The answer is no. So here one important part which you should understand, that you will be allowed to claim that ITC in the 3B form itself, and in 3B form, which means ultimately the last time for which you can claim ITC is October return period, because for the November return period, right, the due date will be in December. So which means time is already gone. So ultimately, you will be able to claim that ITC for previous financial in the October return itself, and the timeline till which you should file that October return period would be your till 30th of November. So these are the two important points which we should understand, because if you're filing after 30th November, again, you will not be allowed to claim ITC of the previous financial year. And even if you're saying, no, I'm going to claim ITC in September return period. So even if you're filing your September return period till 30th November, you will be allowed to claim ITC. But let's say September return, you have filed on 1st December, you will not be allowed to claim ITC of previous financial year. So this is something which we should always keep in mind while we are claiming the ITC, and hope that answers your query. Another question is from Subhash. The question is, what if we file October 2020 return on 30th of November 2022? So Subhash, if your October return which you are filing, right, GST 3B which you are filing for the month of October, if you are filing on 30th November, you will still be allowed to claim the ITC if it has some ITC which is related to your previous financial year. So it is allowed. Right, so this is something I think we just asked, so hope your query is answered. Another, so here we just said that, okay, there could be a difference. So this is as per my books of account, this is what I have claimed, and this is something where I would say this is the kind of thing which I would have claimed in the next year. So still, ideally, there should not be any differences, but there can be actually a differences. Many times what happened that I would have, I have shown that as an ITC claim. I had to claim it, but I have not claimed in my, I would say, let's say I purchased something from a supplier, right? I booked that in my books of accounts also that I have to claim ITC, but I have not claimed that ITC in my GST-3B. The reason, because supplier has not filed the return. So since supplier has not filed the return, I could not claim that in my GSTR-3B itself. I have not claimed in the current year. I have not even claimed the next year. The reason again, because supplier has not filed till, let's say, October ka return period. in that particular case a kind of a lapsed ITC. So you will always see that there is an unreconciled ITC, and you have to tell the reason that why there is a difference between this, right? So this was about like a ITC part. I could see there's another question from Kartike who is asking. There's an auto-populated ITC like 2B or 8A from 21-22 invoice level. Yeah, Kartike, there is a table called table 8A of GSTR-9 where they auto-compute this value from your 2A or 2B, and that is nothing but now they are going to even extend that limit. So the GST-9 is already auto-populated on the GST portal where you're getting the document level information, but they will also refresh this information once again on 1st December, where you may get some more invoices from the supplier if they have delayed in filings. Right, so this was all about like I would say there was a table we just talked about the table, and now then there is a table number 14. So table number 14 talks about reconciliation of input tax credit. So there they're just kind of trying to ask the breakups like, okay, this is my purchases, this is freight, this is power fuels, this is rent and all this thing. You have to give that breakup and then tell your total eligible ITC and the ITC which is claimed in the annual return. If there is a differences, you have to tell it over here. But again, this is optional in nature. Even if you don't give this breakup, that's okay, and most of the info people are not even giving the breakup of this, right? So this is how your entire GSTR-9C can be auto prepared, which means you yourself can prepare. If you look into this, right, if you would have noticed, if you have filed your GSTR-9 properly, right, most of the table you would be auto populated directly from the 9 form itself. So if you look into table number 6 auto prepared, 7 auto prepared, 8 auto prepared, 9 auto prepared, right? Most of the table is already auto prepared from the GST-9 form itself. Only some adjustments, right? Because of the turnover, the financial statement turnover and GST turnover, if there's a differences there, you would be finding it that you have to tell the reasons for the same. I could see there is another question from Vinod who is asking if my input populated in 2A in April 2022, but input of 21-22. Should we add this input in 21-22 or 22-23 as we have utilized in 2022 return? What will be the implication of GST-9? So, Vinod, I'm assuming if you're saying there is an ITC which is appearing in April 2022, but related to your previous financial year, right? So if it was related to previous financial year, you will be able to claim that ITC only in April 2022, because ideally it came or it appeared in your GST to be only in April 2022. So if it is appearing in April 2022, you will be able to claim the ITC also in April 2022 itself. Right, so that is how that information will come in. Now talking about GSTR-9, right? So GSTR-9 there is also one table called table number 13, which talks about ITC related to the current year claimed in the next financial year. So there you have to just show that figure that this is some ITC which is related to the current year claimed in the next financial year. So there you just have to show that figure. So that is how you will be able to explain it. So hope Vinod that answers your query. And still, if you have any further query, you can ask the same. Another question from M who is asking Jan 2022 as per to be input credit eligible. Okay, I think you're saying, okay, I could not get your entire query. Like, are you saying that whether there's an eligible ITC which you can claim it now? If that's your query, then yes, you can always claim it till October return period. Alright, so I think then there's another question from Purushottam who is asking how do we show unadjusted advances in table number 7 and 8. Purushottam, I think it's very clear if you have filed GST-1 correctly, right? You would have already shown the advances also. You would have also shown the advance adjustments, right? The differences between advance minus advance adjustment for that particular financial year is nothing but your unadjusted advances that you can directly show in table number 5, right? So that is how you can always show that figures. Another question is from Abhinav who is asking if there always unreconciled difference in brought forward ITC claimed in next financial. Yes, Abhinav, there would always be differences because of this brought forward ITC in the next financial year. But for that, there is already there is a table, right? When you look into 12 and 13, they still, though it is optional in nature, but still they are asking this information. So you can always fill this information over there that wherever the ITC related to the current year has been claimed in the next year, or the vice versa, like previous year you have claimed in the current year. So that differences you can always show in that particular like table number 12 and 13 itself. Another question from Shashank, who is asking, in GST-9 table number 7 should always be as per 3B, or can we do some adjustment? Shashank, it's always advisable that whenever you are filling table number 7, you should always fill this basis your GSTR 3B. Like, whatever the ITC reversals you have done in GSTR 3B, that as per that you have to fill the information in table number 7. But let's assume there was some extra ITC which you have not reversed in 3B, you forgot to reverse in the 3B, right? If that was the case, then again I would still advise that do the reversal in the 3B form itself of the current financial year, because still you have a time to do such adjustments. Do the reversal in the current form itself and then show in table number 12. So that is how you should fill while you are filing the table number 7 of GSTR-9. So I think we have covered almost all the queries. Still, if you have any queries, right, if you feel like there's some query which has been unanswered, you can always mail us at gstsupport@cleartext.in. So that's my mail ID. And if you, or you can even mail us at surbi@cleartext.in. So that's my mail ID. So you can either mail us at gstsupport@cleartext.in or surbi@cleartext.in. So that's our mail ID. So you have any query related to 9 or 9C, right? You are free to message it or mail it over there, and we'll happy to answer the queries over there. And also there is one feedback form which is circulated on the chat box. I would request everyone, if you can like fill in this form, it will be really great if you can just like fill this form over here. So we have just shared this on the chat box. And yeah, for the PPT and all, if you need that PPT, you can please drop me a mail on surbi@cleartext.in. We'll happy to even mail the PPT over there. Thank you very much. And in case like I think some people are asking if I can also repeat the option field, I would also share. I can just share this PPT with you. Maybe you can drop me a mail at surbi@cleartext.in. So I will happy to even share this PPT. So over there we have clearly mentioned that what are the option fields and what are the mandatory fields. So you can always look into that, refer to that. And still, if you have any query, you can always ask your queries over there. Thank you very much.